Forensic pathologist on the phone here with us. Dr. Michael Baden joining us here live now from Fox to give us insight of this autopsy results. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so doctor, let's get right into it. When a lot of people want to know, what did Gabby look like after 3 to 4 weeks out there in the wilderness? What does that do to the type of decomposition to the body?
There would have been decomposition depending on the weather conditions and whatever rain there might have been and insects there are. But we don't know anything about that because the coroner did not provide any information relative to the condition of the body. Clearly, there'd be changes after the time of death that Gabby's been missing, but that wouldn't affect the cause of death. The only thing released today was not the autopsy report, but the death certificate report, saying that the cause of death was strangulation, and that's dependent. They knew that when the autopsy was done. The only way you know about strangulation is at the time of the autopsy, you see injury to the neck and to the Adam's apple and the hyoid bone, which are right under the neck. So they knew that on day one. They knew it was, and the only way you can get strangulation is by somebody else doing it. You can't strangle yourself, like it was a shooting or a stabbing or blunt force. A person can do injuries to oneself, but one can't strangle oneself. So they knew it was a homicide. They knew it was strangulation. Why they kept the information so long was not given.
All right, and doctor, a lot of people also want to know, is it possible on Gabby's neck then, is there a possibility of DNA that could be linked back to someone?
Yeah, it's unlikely with the passage of time in the open wooded area, as apparently happened with Gabby, to have the DNA. But finding Brian's DNA does not advance anything, because when two people are close together for a time, they're going to get will get the DNA in the other person, whether on the skin, on the neck, in a sex examination, in a fingernail examination. Each will have DNA of the other person around. The only way the DNA will help is if there was a third person's DNA, not Brian's DNA, but somebody else's DNA who wasn't known to have been there. But one of the things nothing was released about the autopsy. One of the things that could be of help is the stomach contents. They know what the stomach contents is, but the only way it's going to be useful is if it's made public, so that other people, there's so much information has been given to the police by the crowdsourcing, by the people following this, by your listeners, where the van was, where the altercation took place with the police, all crowdsourcing. If there's some food in the stomach, say corn and beef, maybe there's somebody out there who will say, yeah, we know a restaurant in that area that serves that kind of food, for example, that the police may have no clue about. So that the crowdsourcing has become much more important in the past few years in all murder investigations than it used to be. And there's no reason to keep it secret from the people who've been helpful in the first place. This is an excellent example to me over the decades of how transparency can be very helpful in a police investigation.
Absolutely, and you were talking a little bit ago too about the timeline here and the timing of this release. Why do you think it did take so much time for this release of the death certificate?
I think that the release of the death certificate and the keeping of the body. Remember, the body is still in Wyoming. I mean, that's bizarre. There are 20,000, 18,000 murders a year in the United States. 99.9% of those murders, the bodies go back to the family within a couple of days, or there's no reason to keep the body after the autopsy is done, because the medical examiner takes whatever is necessary for testing. I'm sure that it wasn't necessary to do anything, from a lab point of view, from a forensic pathology point of view, in the time that the body has been in Wyoming instead of with the family. But that wasn't addressed. That wasn't answered either, why it was kept so long.
And I think
why it's still there.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. The body, it is why it was kept on. And I think a question came up about it, and the coroner said, "We don't know. That's between the funeral director and the family." Well, at this point, when they release the body, it's between the funeral director and the family. But why have they held on to the body unnecessarily for all this time? One of the things that's interesting, though, about strangulation is that it's the kind of murder that causes the least conscious pain and suffering, because when there's compression of the neck with the hands or with the ligature, the individual usually loses consciousness within 5 or 10 seconds. If there's obstruction to blood flow to the brain for 5 or 10 seconds, the person loses consciousness. And then whatever else happens to the body, the decedent doesn't feel. So one of the questions that medical examiners are commonly asked by families is, did my child suffer? And in this instance, there may have been suffering in an argument, but once the strangulation started, the unconsciousness caused the victim to feel little pain or suffering.
And Dr. Michael Bowden, can we also talk about the way that this type of homicide, strangulation, I mean, it's a very intimate one. It's not where a shooting where you're so far apart from someone. This is like in the terms of a stabbing as well, where, I mean, you are right there with the person.
That's right. It's a very personal kind of contact, but that also happens with strangers. I mean, you've reported on, a female who's jogging along a jogging trail is found dead and strangled. Usually the death is from strangulation, because that immediately prevents the individual from calling for help, number one, by squeezing on the neck. And if one squeezes on the neck, and it's invariably 90% of the time a male with more strength than the female, the person can lose consciousness, and within a minute or two, there's enough brain damage that the person can't recover because of the lack of oxygen going to the brain. So it's very quick. It can be very quick. We don't know if she had any defensive wounds, for example. There should be evidence in the autopsy whether or not she struggled, whether or not she had defensive wounds, how long the argument took, the physical at the time of death, and whether there had been previous injuries, like the type that the police talked to her about, a week or two before. So there's a lot of information can be gathered, but as far as the cause of death and the manner of death, that they knew on day one.
And lastly here, Dr. Michael, a lot of people, our viewers, wanted to know this one as well. For the coroner today, when he was doing the announcement, he was tight-lipped on so many different things pertaining to this case. Can you give us, our viewers, some insight on why the coroner was just so tight-lipped?
Well, for one thing, he didn't do the autopsy. Now, I don't know if he was a physician or not. 95%, 98% of coroners in the United States are not physicians. Coroners are elected offices, officials, and a doctor could run for coroner and may or may not get elected. Some coroners in California especially are hired by the sheriff or the police. They work for the police, so they're not an independent person doing an autopsy. But I think that the it sounded to me that the coroner probably wasn't the physician, although I don't know that because it wasn't clarified, and that the medical questions should be answered by the person who does the autopsy. But the way they have it set up there, they said out front right away, we can't release anything except the cause and manner of death. Well, that doesn't leave room for transparency because, if you get a whole autopsy and somebody might pick up something like the way her fingernails were done, and they say, yeah, that she must have had those fingernails done in a certain nail place that does that unusual type of fingernail attention. Or, as I said, the stomach contents can tell you a lot as to the last place the person ate. If there's still stuff in the stomach, like the string beans or corn or beets, that means that the death occurred within an hour or two after the being in the restaurant. So if Brian is seen within the restaurant where they serve that food and she's dead for 20 days and the food's still in the stomach, that means she was killed within an hour or two because the stomach empties after about 2 hours of the dinner. So I just think that I'm very impressed with crowdsourcing here, and that releasing the whole autopsy would permit more attention paid by the crowd following this case that has yielded so much information so far.
Yeah, it's truly amazing to see what, social media, everyone just seems to really take in this case, and they want to try to find clues
And they found a lot of clues, right?
Yeah, and it's amazing to see that play out in real time. I mean, to the point of you don't know what it's going to be like the next hour because somebody might uncover something. But Dr. Michael
notices something, right?
Yep. So, Dr. Michael Baden, we appreciate you joining us and phoning in and giving us your insight coming up off of the death certificate being released. We totally appreciate it.